Welcome to Almost Here, Round the Corner of Future Technology podcasts with Richard Jacobs. Future technologies poised to transform our lives for better or worse are the focus of this podcast. Almost here means these technologies are now here and starting to be used, or just around the corner, from Bitcoin to artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more. Coming to Dallas, Texas, September 14th, 15th, and 16th, 2018, the Blockchain and Future Tech Expo. This is going to be a gigantic conference of over 5,000 people. We're going to be talking about blockchain and its applications. We're going to be talking about quantum computing, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, and several other future technologies that are poised to and actually changing our lives as we speak. Here's why you should attend. As you may know, early adopters are the ones that investigated and profited from things like the gold rush in the 1800s, from the dot-com boom in the 1990s, from the internet boom in 2005, from the smartphone explosion in 2007, from the real estate boom that ended in 2008, and of course, from the Bitcoin boom that started in 2012. Early adopters act now. They don't wait till later. They go out west first, in their covered wagons. They find the biggest gold nuggets. If you consider yourself an early adopter and you want to find the biggest nuggets, then you owe it to yourself to attend this upcoming conference. Blockchain is going to affect how we control and store our medical data, how we send money around the world, how we bank, and more. But artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and cybersecurity will play a pivotal role in our lives as well. And that's why our next event, September 14th to the 16th at the Dallas Convention Center, is going to have not only 5,000 plus attendees, but will showcase blockchain, AI, cybersecurity, quantum computing, and more. You want to get in on the coming gold rush of future tech and opportunity as an early adopter. Don't be left out. To register, go to bftexpo.com. That's blockchainfuturetechexpo.com. Thank you. Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with Future Tech Podcast. My two guests today are Dale Pfost and Mark Heiman, both co-founders of MicroBiome, the letter M, BIOME, the MicroBiome team. Dale is the CEO and Mark is the Chief Science Officer. How are you guys doing today?
Great, excellent.
Yeah, thanks for coming. So, I always start out with the basics. Tell me about MicroBiome. What's the premise of the company? What do you guys do?
Okay, well, first, the name of the company is MicroBiome Therapeutics. So microbiome is one of the hot emerging areas in biotechnology in the last few years. And what microbiome does is produces products that are meant to help build a better biome. It is like probiotics, but it's taking that to a whole new era. And we have developed a product that is a microbiome modulator, which is a drink mix to help build a better biome. And we can tell you a little bit about the backstory to it and how the company came together.
Yeah, before we get into that, I've spoken to a few companies in this area. So a lot of them, what they provide is actual strains of bacteria to modulate your gut. And then one company I spoke to, they try to give you the products that some of the bacteria make, certain proteins or other chemicals, and they give that to you to modulate your gut. But what do you guys do specifically? What products do you provide?
So there's really three ways you can modulate the microbiome. One is you can hope to add probiotics, which are the bacteria. But by and large, the bacteria you can get in probiotics are not necessarily the ones you're missing, and they're in a vastly small amount, and they wouldn't survive the transit or engraft themselves into the lower GI. The other one is postbiotics, which is the stuff that the bacteria would otherwise produce, which is not a bad idea. You need to enterically coat them to get to the lower GI. Well, we have adopted what we think is perhaps the most appropriate strategy, which is to provide the nourishment, the prebiotics to the bacteria that are naturally occurring in the lower GI, into the large intestines. It's because of the lack of nutrients that they're suffering or that they're not doing their job. So that's we think is perhaps the best approach, and we've done 2 clinical trials that have had great success in proving the benefit of doing that.
So why is it important to give the bacteria things to eat? Prebiotics. Wouldn't you say they just get that in your gut? And so why provide that for them?
Yeah, so the main thing that's happened over the last 50 years isn't genetics hasn't changed. What's primarily changed is the diet, and what the diet is highly processed, and it's high in simple carbohydrates and sugar, and it's low in things like fermentable fibers and prebiotics. But it might be good for Mark to pick this up as well, because I think he's got a deep insight into it.
Sure. Our food supply has been, over the last 50 years, has had less diversity, and it's the nutrients in our food supply that drive the diversity of our microbiome. The greater the diversity seems to be associated with health, and when the richness of the different species in the microbiome is decreased, those always, or almost always, seem to be associated with disease states. And so we were looking at our diet and our diet histories and how our food supply has changed to say how can we add back some of that diversity so we get diversity of our microbiome. And we actually published a paper on diversity of your diet that you could read, or you could at least get the reference from our website at www.biome.Com, and you'll see the reference to that scientific peer-reviewed paper, which, by the way, last year was one of the top 6 papers cited for that journal.
Yeah, I definitely want to read that, and I'm sure listeners will too. Can you give any guidance? You don't have to go into crazy detail, but what are some foods that have emerged in our diets, and what are they doing to our microbiomes? Are they killing certain strains, or are they just favoring other strains that take over that may not be beneficial? So let's start with that, and then I want to ask you what foods are missing that people could take or eat, that would help their microbiome move in the right direction.
I think I'd like to answer with the latter question. What is missing is some of the oligosaccharides that are in our diet, which we commonly call fiber. The USDA recommends that we have about 26 grams of fiber, but the average American eat less than half of that. It is the fiber, it is those molecules that we collectively call fiber that serve as prebiotics for the microbiota. The microbiota are converting those into signaling molecules, and those signaling molecules are signaling our physiological systems to do wonderful things, and so it's missing from our diet. That is one thing. Polyphenols, antioxidants, are largely missing from our diet, and so we need to add back some of those polyphenols. In the past, we have thought that these molecules are absorbed into the blood and have effects in the blood, but now it's becoming more apparent that they remain in our guts and are trafficked to the microbiome, where they do serve as prebiotics themselves to stimulate certain microbiota for really important functions. Those are some of the missing things, but there's also things in our diet that may be detrimental to the microbiome. Recently, egg yolk in the past has been thought to be detrimental because of cholesterol, but these days, because of what we've learned about the microbiome, the choline and lecithin in egg yolk is really attributed to the microbiome generating a substance that is abbreviated as TAMO and thought to drive atherosclerosis and cardiovascular disease. So it's not always good things in our diet. Sometimes it's things that are detrimental, especially the processed foods. So that's what we do as a company. We look to see what are some of the shifts of the microbiome that we observe associated with certain unhealthy states, some disease states. What might be the cause of that? What is missing in the diet? It's easier to put back something that is missing from our modern diets than it is to delete something. And that's the way we think about it. That's the way we design our product.
So if I was to be your customer, are you dealing with individual people? you're dealing with organizations, and what happens when someone's your customer? Literally, what do they do and what do they experience?
Right, we're going about it in two ways. One is we'll have an online presence and selling through e-commerce and supported by social media. So that's a direct-to-consumer marketing approach. And then we also have...
Hey, sorry, I lost you there. You said we also have... Are you still on the line?
Yeah, I'm sorry, yes. And we also have an approach of getting to registered dietitians and certified diabetic educators who will be able to directly communicate with their clients, and that goes to gym owners and other clinics. So we have those two approaches to get our product to the marketplace. So the product is actually a drink mix. It comes in a canister with 15 servings. And so people just mix it up in water. They can add it to their smoothie, can add it with ice and soda water if they want to, or add it to their yogurt. But it's a complete mix. It's not something that you need to add to something else. You can just drink it as it is. It's very desirable. People that have used it, and there's hundreds that have done so now, keep on asking for it because it's a desirable thing to drink. There's no equivalent product on the marketplace today.
So it's like a powder packet you rip open and mix in with other stuff, and you probably have different flavors, I guess, orange or raspberry or something like that.
Yeah, so we have a canister of 15 servings, and so if you want to see how it sort of fits into a person's routine, it's a little bit like a protein powder. People have become accustomed to that, except in our case, it's got very little protein at all. It's a prebiotic blend that's proprietary. It is the first flavor is a berry flavored that we're launching in just a few weeks, and it helps people build a better biome. The clinical trials that we did actually demonstrated three benefits, and one of those is that it helps maintain a healthy blood glucose level from already healthy levels. Two, it helps with GI health and regularity. And three, one of my favorites is that it helps manage hunger. And so how it fit into my life, I started seeing that if I had a serving in the morning, and then I had before breakfast, and then another serving before lunch, that later that day I'd be able to better control the portion size, and sort of those binges went away. So when I was looking at a pint of ice cream at 8 o'clock in the evening, it no longer looked like a single serving size portion. So it actually it worked. So we're pretty excited by that as well.
Does the mixture differ for different people, or is it set so that it's optimized where it'll pretty much benefit anyone that drinks it?
I think on today's diets, it pretty much will benefit everyone, but I think there are special groups that will benefit the most. In our clinical trials, that you can also see the publications in peer-reviewed journals on our website. In those clinical trials, we try to recruit pre-diabetics. These are usually people that are overweight or obese and have a propensity to become a type 2 diabetic. So we tested it in those individuals, and when we did, we found the greatest benefit in those who were closest to becoming a type 2 diabetic. But we also observed during our clinical trial a decrease in satiety, which would make one feel full as they eat their meal. And in everyone that was tested, there was a significant difference, which was great to find when we had small numbers in our trial. We also
you said a decrease in satiety. Does that mean they eat and they feel less full? Or?
Exactly. So satiety is a sensation that one achieves when one eats a meal and they start feeling full and mainly feeling satisfied with the meal before they complete that whole meal. So if one was testing satiety, and we tested it with a validated instrument, people felt more full and satisfied with their meals much earlier than what they would without the product, or NM504 is what we called it during the clinical trial. So that was a finding. Another finding that we found was an increase in regularity. So although we didn't recruit subjects in our trial based on regularity, we did have some subjects that were recruited into the trial that maybe only had one bowel movement every 3 days, some one bowel movement every 2 days, and they became regular with one bowel movement every day.
Okay.
Yeah, and that pretty much was a surprise. And those particular individuals, when the trial was finished, was asking for more. If they could have some samples, where could they get it? Because that really provided some relief to them. And so that was one of our trials. During that period of testing, we had an opportunity with an individual that just became a type 2 diabetic, and so his physician prescribed metformin, which is the first line of treatment for a newly diagnosed type 2 diabetic. Metformin is a rather old drug, but it's a good drug. Works very well, but in some people, maybe about 30%, it has bad GI side effects, and that was the case here. So what we did was we knew the individual, we talked to his physician, and we thought that based on the mechanism of action of metformin that we knew about then, and the mechanism of action of what we called NM504 or GIM, and now BiomeBliss, that this might mitigate some of those side effects and not interfere with the glucose control. In fact, may help the glucose control. We tested it in him. We gave it to him as a gift, and it was such a dramatic difference for this individual that we published a case report on that study that you can also find on our website. And we had to do a clinical trial. We raised the funds, even though it was difficult at this time to do a second clinical trial, which where we stacked the deck against us and just looked and just tried to recruit individuals who had tried metformin and were intolerant to it. And again, we found in that trial it was very beneficial. But I must say that none of these studies have been evaluated by the FDA. So we're not trying to market this for any disease or any combination with metformin at this point.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. You said you've done clinical trials. Is this a medical food, or are you intending to get this FDA approved, this drink mix, or what status do you want it to have?
Yeah, so the product will be launched as a supplement, and as a supplement, the claims that we'll be able to make have to do with the ability to maintain GI health and regularity, to help maintain blood glucose from already healthy levels, and third, to help manage hunger. So those are the claim language palette, if you will, that we can work within for this regulatory route. With time, with additional development funds and additional trials, we could expand to other regulatory routes and also to expanded claims. But in the meantime, we think the product is fantastic the way it is, and it can help a lot of people. We actually expect to get more inputs from consumers. People that are using it will give us feedback as to how it's working and how they fit it into their lives, and then from there we actually may do formal clinical trials. Medical food is certainly an opportunity in the future, and there's nothing to keep us from eventually filing an IND and undertaking classical pharmaceutically oriented clinical trials for the product. It's the material itself has the promise enough to make that at least a good aspiration for ourselves.
Yeah, and this may be a strange question, but why do you think it works, or why do you experimentally, what's going on? What's making it work for people?
Maybe I could take that one. So when we began, our target audience was pre-diabetics. The reason for that is at the time that we did that, pre-diabetic was a brand new term. Most diabeticians didn't know what pre-diabetic or pre-diabetes was. And but what was known was that if you can intervene somehow with the glucose regulation in the pre-diabetic, you might be able to halt the progression to type 2 diabetes for at least 5 years. And so here represented an unmet need. And in addition to that, at the time, we could see a dysbiosis or a dysregulation of what microbiota existed in the pre-diabetic. And looking at that, we thought, how might we intervene? How might we discover a GI microbiome modulator that would be beneficial to somebody in a pre-diabetic state and prevent them from progressing to type 2 diabetes? That was our goal. we looked at the literature, read a lot, thought a lot, looked at what other people published in their data, but thought how might that function in the microbiome because it was so new at the time, and came up with a couple needs that we thought might modify in a blend. So we didn't think one agent could. One agent from food, and that was another thing. We wanted to get into the clinic as fast as possible. So we wanted to only work with food with food ingredients that were already recognized as safe, generally recognized as safe. That way, we could just rush to the clinic with approval from a investigative review board and test our concept in the clinic. We came up with a need for 3 different food ingredients, one being inulin, a type of fiber, one being beta-glucan, another type of fiber, but the purpose of that was to protect this mucosal barrier in the gut. And the third was these polyphenols from blueberry. And the reason for that was to guide the microbiome as a prebiotic to shift it into a direction that we thought was advantageous.
When you say you want to shift the microbiome in a direction, what does that mean? Does that mean that you'll do a profile of the bacteria in someone's gut and you'll see that profile change after they've had this shake for, or this drink for a month and a half? I mean, and if there is a change, what does it look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. In one case, we saw that this population of individuals lacked short-chain fatty acids that are produced by microbiota. So the first ingredient, inulin, would ameliorate that and increase the short-chain fatty acids. But at the same time, it produces hydrogen. And hydrogen is used by other microbiota, such as microbiota that create hydrogen sulfide in the gut and microbiota that create methane. Both those gases are undesirable. So how can one stimulate short-chain fatty acids, but at the same time not cross-feed? That's what it's called in the literature. By generating hydrogen, are we not only feeding some microorganisms that can use the hydrogen and create a problem? And so what one has to do is then think, well, how might you stimulate? There's a third group of microorganisms that use hydrogen. These are called acetogens. That would be desirable. So why not add another isolated food ingredient without the sugar? And in our case, it comes from blueberries. It's a proprietary ingredient from blueberries that would stimulate the acetogens, so they would use the hydrogen and outcompete the sulfate-reducing bacteria and the methane produces by using up all the hydrogen. So that's what we mean by shift.
Mm-hmm. How long does it take to shift someone's microbiome in your guys' experience?
Well, our trials were 4 weeks for the first trial with pre-diabetics, and then on the second trial, when we were using it in combination with metformin, it was 2 weeks with a 2-week washout, and that taught us a lot because the effect was not washed out after 2 weeks, meaning those subjects stopped taking the NM504 for 2 weeks, and still the effect, especially the effect on blood glucose levels, were maintained even though they didn't take anything for 2 weeks. So I think it is a durable effect. I believe that it should be effective within 3 days, and but we only started sampling after 2 weeks, so we don't know exactly how fast it will work. We have a hint because unlike some substances, you may take a certain medication or a certain dietary supplement and not know whether it's working or not. With this one, you do, because you have different sensations in your gut, and so most of our subjects that were in our trial and ourselves, as we try it, we can sense within the first couple of days that a change is taking place.
That's interesting. What do you mean? Like, what anecdotally do you sense? Like, maybe I'm sure you guys have drank this. What do you sense? What do you feel that's different? Or what have people told you they feel is different?
Dale's our champion.
So I've used it lots of different ways, and I'd say the way it fits into my daily routine and has a really good benefit is that I'll have one before breakfast and then another one before lunch and dinner. Maybe a couple of years ago, if you would have put a whole chicken in front of me at dinner time, I might have eaten the whole thing because I'd just starved myself during the day. And you know how people say that breakfast is the most important meal of the day, and that's partially because it takes a while for the food to get to your lower GI, to your large intestines, and feed the bacteria there, and the bacteria, they have metabolites that they produce that then signal to your brain that you're full. And so that's a much delayed response. And so that's why they say breakfast is the most important part of the day. But with any good meal, if you will, you get a reasonable number of calories. And so, and sometimes people switch over to protein powder as a way of achieving that. But most Americans, don't actually need extra protein. It's just the case that we're overfeeding ourselves with protein. It's a bit of a myth that's sustained. Right. So what this does is allows you to take a blend of prebiotics, including the polyphenols, the antioxidants, that would have been a few hundred calories of food that would have taken you a while to prepare and certainly a while to munch on and eat, and it allows you to mix it in a very convenient drink. And so one of those in the morning takes me 15 seconds to prepare, and anywhere from 15 seconds to a couple minutes to drink, depending on how I want to drink it, and I'm good to go. And the benefit of that, and then another one perhaps at lunchtime, actually comes back, and you can feel the difference. You just don't have those pangs, and most people that are listening probably have had those themselves, where they know that they open that refrigerator at 8 o'clock and nothing good's going to happen. That pint of Haagen-Dazs looks like it's ready to go. And that just doesn't happen as much. So that's how it fits into my lifestyle, and you have a feeling of satisfaction as opposed to sort of the pangs of hunger, and it's a nice thing to get rid of.
What about customization? Is there any plan in your roadmap to offer some kind of testing for people and then a customized powder blend for them, or is it work well enough that one size fits all?
Yeah, so we will certainly explore forms of interacting with our consumers. The idea that people have a built-in difference that's some sort of intrinsic to them, so therefore they should have a tailored microbiome modulator, that might apply to people who are much older. Their diet is much constricted, or it may apply to people with certain indications if they have IBS. There may be certain conditions where you might want to have a different one, but by and large, if somebody's got a tweaked or so-called dysbiotic microbiome, it's probably because they've been eating poorly. They've been eating proteins without vegetables and without fruit. And this is going to work for a vast majority of folks that are healthy but otherwise eating badly. And sometimes it's not so much the fact that they're eating bad ingredients in their food. It's just that they're not eating the good things. So this allows a very convenient way of supplementing the needs of the microbiome in a way that should work for the vast majority of people without customization. But Mark, I think you have some good ideas on that as well.
Yeah, I think that we all try to vary our diet from day to day, and so it would be difficult to take, for example, a stool sample and analyze the stool sample on day one when you ate a certain meal at a certain restaurant and say, oh, this is your microbiome, therefore you need X, and customize it for that. But I do think that there are physiological states, and we don't understand it well enough yet, but there are physiological states where there are major differences to the microbiome. It starts when we're born. It might even start if we're born prematurely. How do you get that microbiome? How is it developed? And really, in the future from now, the developmental biology of the gut will include developmental biology of the microbiome. So there's a certain physiological state with a certain diet that probably could be customized, and I'm sure that companies that make infant formulas are all over this. I know they are right now. And then when the infant starts enjoying their first meal, the first solid meal, the first solid food from breast milk, that's another time where where maybe there could be some customization. The hormones during puberty, our hormones affect our microbiome, and our microbiome affects our hormones. This is another time where there might be some major adjustments to the microbiome as we age. Women in particular, once they reach menopause, is another time again, and then aging. What about disease states? I'm really interested in what I think is a reboot. What about when one gets an infection, you get the flu, and it leads to pneumonia, and you have to take an oral antibiotic? What do you do after you have this oral antibiotic? That oral antibiotic is not 100% bioavailable, meaning 100% of it gets into your blood. What doesn't get into your blood goes to your lower gut, and it is an antibiotic, so it disrupts the microbiome. And so what should you do? How should you recapitulate what was there, or is this an opportunity to alter it and change it to something that might be more healthy? Those are all great.
Yeah, a lot of factors, modulators. Makes sense. Okay. So where are you guys at with this? This drink? Is it available commercially? Where can people find it? How much is it? Et cetera? What flavors?
Right. So we'll be launching the product in just several weeks, and the easiest way to get it would be via our website. We'll also be getting it on Amazon as well. So our website for the product is biome.BLiss.com, and you can put your name in there now to get a mailing when the product is launched. And the main company's name is MicroBiome Therapeutics, and its website is mbiome.com.
Yeah, this question I probably should have asked in the beginning, but how did you guys get into this? What's your backgrounds, and what led you to make this formulation?
So my background is in starting biotechnology companies and running them for 6 or 7 years until an IPO or a trade sale. And so like most people, I'm interested in helping people's health and how to improve their quality of life. And in the case of the Microbiome Therapeutics, 3 co-founders came together who just had the right background, actually. Mark, I met at a networking reception in 2010 following a talk I gave at Tulane University of how to raise venture capital. And Mark came up afterwards at a networking thing and introduced himself, and we started talking about the microbiome and his observations as how it was a new and up-and-coming field that he had some great ideas for. And as things will happen, perhaps especially in New Orleans, we got to talking over a couple of beers. And I think it was that first night the concept emerged that the microbiomes in the GI could be addressed as the target to improve health. And that was Mark's real breakthrough idea. I thought, it's the gut bacteria could be the target, not to kill them, as in with antibiotics, but rather to help the good ones to help our health. And it was real keen forward thinking. The other co-founder is John Elstrott, who was a professor at Tulane's Business School and the founder of their entrepreneurial institute there. He was also the chairman of Whole Foods and has been involved and is still involved with lots of health food companies that went on to enormous success. And so John was interested in the scientific approach to nutritional-based health, and all 3 of us were interested in an evidence-based company that wouldn't necessarily require $50 million to get through the hurdles of the FDA and the clinical trials. So we sort of met in the middle with the idea of focusing on medical foods and supplements based on treating the microbiome. So that's sort of the story of how it came together.
Well, very good. So I guess last question, what's on your roadmap for 2018? You said in a few weeks, products going to be available on Amazon, through your website, which is great. You're going to be launching. What else is in the cards for you guys this year?
Yes, we're getting a network of certified diabetic educators and registered dietitians up to speed on the product so they can help communicate the benefits of the product. So that's taking place. And then towards the latter part of the year, we'll be preparing for a retail launch and getting into the right channels to get into a series of retail stores where the product would sit comfortably and fit in with the sort of the mentality and the purchasing behaviors of folks that visit those stores. We'll also be looking at launching additional flavors. Initially, we're just going with a single flavor, and we see at least 2 or 3 additional flavors, and eventually, perhaps in 2019, additional product formats beyond just the powdered drink mix to other formats based on the same basic ingredients.
Well, very good. So any last ways for people to contact you that are interested in getting your product or speaking with you about possible ventures? Is the website the best? Where should they go? Or email?
BiomeBliss, BiomeBliss.com. And you can drop your name there, and we'll get back to you. If there's specific interest, you can let us know. And we'll be getting a mailing to you when the product is launched in a few weeks.
Well, great. Dale, Mark, thank you so much for coming on the line. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Richard.
Yep, our pleasure. Thank you.
Coming to Dallas, Texas, September 14th, 15th, and 16th, 2018, the Blockchain and Future Tech Expo. This is going to be a gigantic conference of over 5,000 people. We're going to be talking about blockchain and its applications. We're going to be talking about quantum computing, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, and several other future technologies that are poised to and actually changing our lives as we speak. Here's why you should attend. As you may know, early adopters are the ones that investigated and profited from things like the gold rush in the 1800s, from the dot-com boom in the 1990s, from the internet boom in 2005, from the smartphone explosion in 2007, from the real estate boom that ended in 2008, and of course, from the Bitcoin boom that started in 2012. Early adopters act now. They don't wait till later. They go out west first. In their covered wagons, they find the biggest gold nuggets. If you consider yourself an early adopter and you want to find the biggest nuggets, then you owe it to yourself to attend this upcoming conference. Blockchain is going to affect how we control and store our medical data, how we send money around the world, how we bank, and more. But artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and cybersecurity will play a pivotal role in our lives as well. And that's why our next event, September 14th to the 16th at the Dallas Convention Center, is going to have not only 5,000 plus attendees, but will showcase blockchain, AI, cybersecurity, quantum computing, and more. You want to get in on the coming gold rush of future tech and opportunity as an early adopter. Don't be left out. To register, go to bftexpo.com. That's blockchainfuturetechexpo.com. Thank you. You have been listening to Almost Here, Around the Corner Future Technology podcast with Richard Jacobs. Subscribe to this podcast, post a review to discover more future technologies that are poised to transform our lives for better or worse, such as Bitcoin, artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more.